All right, so we are on. We got Mr. Patrick Arryn, man. Thank you for coming in today.
Man, no problem. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate you doing it, man. I know you're busy. So, man, I wanted to get you in here today because you have an interesting story. And
Okay.
you have an interesting come up story. So right now you're a realtor, a
Correct.
real estate agent, but you also have an entrepreneurial side to you aside from the real estate, right?
Correct.
And I think it has to do with sports.
Correct.
And I thought that was awesome.
Okay.
You got two different things going on. So just kind of talk about how you got to where you are, man.
Okay, cool, man. I'm from a small town called Temple, Texas. It's central of Texas, 45 minutes from Austin, about an hour and 45 minutes from Dallas, and 45 minutes from College Station. I was blessed to be able to get a full scholarship to go to Baylor University, and I graduated from Baylor. And as I was at Baylor, I became friends with a lot of the athletes on the football team, basketball team, baseball team, volleyball team. And my goal was, if I didn't become a pro athlete, I was going to be a financial advisor for athletes. And then as I ran across some of now who I'm considering my mentors, they said, "Hey, Pat, why don't you become a sports agent since you're best friends with some of these guys that are about to go first round in the NFL and first round in the NBA?" And I was like, "I don't know nothing about being a sports agent." And they was like, "Well, let me show you." So I was like, "All right, cool." Well, when right when I was about to graduate, I had offers to go work for the top sports agencies all over the country. But I had my child my junior year in college, and these jobs, one of the requirements was for me to move the state. And I couldn't see myself leaving my infant child and going to another state. So I started my own sports agency after interning. Well, to be transparent and honest and humble as I can be, I didn't have clients that were paying me a lot. And so one of my mentors said, "Hey, get your real estate license." And
What were you studying in college?
so my major in college was religion and financial planning.
Gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
so totally different.
Totally
Yeah.
different route, man. And so, again, my plan was to be a financial advisor for athletes and also churches. So that's where the religion part comes in. I believe one of our cures to fixing a lot of issues we have in America is the church, but the right church and doing it the right way. And so, again, I had a little detour to where, I became a sports agent. Well, when I realized I didn't have the capital to afford a lot of these athletes, because, long story short, if you have a first round athlete, when they're done playing their last college game, they're about $60,000 to $80,000 investment from January until they get drafted in April. Of course, I was a brand new, college grad. I didn't have $60,000 to $80,000 saved up. So my uncle, JD Walters.
And just so the 60 to 80,000 people know, so the 60 to 80,000 that you said that the players are investing, this is to what, to get their name out to pro league, or because
Yeah.
yeah, okay, so
Like,
they're spending money to get their name out there, so they have a good chance of getting into a draft. What are they spending the money on?
So I'll break it down to you. Good question. So it's not the player, it's the agent. So I was a certified agent. And so when you have a first round player, how the system works is once they're done playing their last collegiate game, they still don't got money because they haven't been drafted yet. They haven't signed that check with the team. So you're taking a $60,000 to $80,000 investment as an agent towards that player to pay for their training, pay for their room and board, pay for their expensive recovery, massages, protein, food, rental cars if they don't have a car. And then some of these athletes, to be honest with you, they're divas. They want you to fly their girlfriend out or their side chick out every other week. Just being real with you, man. And so that's a $60,000 to $80,000 investment, and then you're hoping that they get drafted. Because if they don't get drafted, then you just wasted $60,000 to $80,000. And so, that's a whole nother discussion on being strategic on which athletes you're going to go after and which athletes you're going to sign. And so I didn't have that $60,000 to $80,000 to pay for training, to pay for room and board, to pay for their protein. Sometimes you got to pay their mama's rent, you got to pay their daddy's rent, and that's just
You got to make sure they're good.
You got to make sure they're
They
good.
focus on the game.
Yeah. And so my uncle said, "Hey, Pat, washing cars, which was what I was doing that. Washing cars and working at a restaurant ain't gonna help you build 60 to 80,000 in capital, in a year, or not even in 2 years, not even 3 years." He said, "Let me show you the real estate game." And I said, man, I don't know what real estate is. And this was the first time that I heard about real estate. I went through middle school, I went through high school, I went to a JUCO, and then I went to a prestigious private university in Texas, and I never heard about real estate. And my uncle that I haven't spoken to in years is one of those family members that I wasn't close to. He sent me a Facebook message, and he said, hey, Pat, let's talk about real estate. I can help you get this sports agency going. So the original goal was to just get my real estate license just for my athletes. So when it was time for the athletes to buy a home, not only would I make 3% off their NFL or NBA contract, but I would make 3% or 6% or whatever the percentage is off of purchasing their house or selling their home. So I was like, all right, cool. So just a little details. I took the test twice and I failed it because I thought I was in college. I thought I was going to be able to just to finesse the test. And then I learned quickly that I really had to study. So, man, once I failed it the second time, I locked myself in my brother's home. I want to say for about 2 to 3 weeks. Nobody saw me. I didn't go to the only place I went to was church. I didn't go get a haircut. I didn't go to the bars. I was single at the time. It was just my daughter and the house, and that was it. And so I shut myself in for 2 to 3 weeks, and then I took the test the third time, and I aced it.
And how long does it take to actually get for those people wanting to be a real estate agent?
Yeah.
How long does it take to get that license?
So depending on your schedule, I know some folks who got their real estate license in 45 to 60 days, 3 months. It took me about 5 to 6 months to get my license. Okay. And that's because I studied real slow, but I was also working a full-time job. I was washing cars. I was trying to recruit athletes, and most importantly, I was a full-time dad to my one child. So it took me about 5 to 6 months to get licensed. But if I didn't have all those other responsibilities, I could have probably knocked it out in 2 to 3 months.
And this is after your schooling, or
this was after my schooling?
Okay, so now you're out of school. You just got your license. Okay,
so, correct.
And your goal is sports agent.
Correct. My goal is sports agent. So I graduated from Baylor University in 2016. And then I became licensed as a sports agent January of 2017. And then I got my real estate license November of 2017.
Nice. Okay.
And so I get my license. And again, I'm following the plan that I have on paper just to do real estate for my athletes. And so I happened to put on social media was a very powerful tool to the beginning of my success, that, hey, Temple, Texas, which is where I'm from, I have my real estate license. And I do a lot of community work. I do a lot of charity work where I'm from due to the background of my childhood. And within 60 days of being licensed, I had 6 residential closings.
Wow.
They were
nice.
Family members. They were church members. One of the individuals was a military guy that I worked out with. And so I said, hey, I just made my capital for one good first round athlete. I just made $60,000, in 90 days. And so I said, well, I'm not just going to sell houses to athletes now. I'm going to sell houses to anybody who wants to buy a house or who wants to sell their house. And so that's where the real estate came in. And then the year following after that, because I built up the capital from my real estate license, we landed a first-round NFL player. We landed a first-round WNBA player, and then we landed other draft picks as well in the NBA and NFL. And then 2023, we have 2 of the top athletes in men's basketball that were praying and hoping get drafted first round. So that's how everything started.
That's awesome, man. And so are you also working with, I guess, coaches? Because this is an investment for you as much as the time that the athletes put into their professional athletic career, right? It's an investment for them too. So I imagine you probably have contact with coaches and their teams, and because you kind of want to know what's going on, right?
Correct. Okay. If you go through my phone right now, I communicate with college coaches. I communicate with NBA, NFL, WNBA coaches, GMs, scouts, and in the world of social media now, I'm having to communicate with high school coaches and then even middle school coaches, because now in men's basketball and women's basketball, these kids are getting scholarships while they're in middle school. Wow. So now I'm having to build those relationships literally with middle school and high school coaches.
Wow, man. That's crazy. I didn't know that they were getting scholarships that early.
Yep.
And that's a little, I think that's great, right? Because if you have a talent, you want to definitely scout that talent early. How do you think that affects, do you think you're a sports agent, so you probably think it's a very positive thing. But setting up professional athletes, I think for the future, because when people think future,
Yeah.
they don't realize that an athletic career is what 6 years.
3.5 years. If you're lucky in the NFL, the average in the NBA is 2.5 years. Women's basketball, we don't have data for that because that's a new sport. It's only been around for 20 years.
Gotcha. So when you talk about future for athletes, right?
Yep.
What comes to your mind? What is a future for a professional athlete or someone trying to go down that route?
How are we going to make you financially free, and how are we going to build you a income when you're 27 years old?
Gotcha.
Because you're going to get drafted. If you play all 4 years in college football or college basketball, when you get drafted, you'll be 22, 23 years old. You're lucky if you play 3.5 years. So you're looking at the ages of 26, 27, 28 when you're done playing. That's what data says. And just to back up a little bit, when people see Tom Brady, when they see LeBron James, that's not the norm.
That's who I was going to mention.
That
right?
is not the norm. Players don't play 15. I tell people all the time, Tom Brady and LeBron James are aliens. I believe it. There's no way Tom Brady is 46 years old out there doing 20-year-olds the way he's doing them.
He looks like he's in his prime.
Yes, he looks like he's in his prime.
It's kind of scary, actually.
Yes. Yes. So that is not the norm. Though that's a very, very small percentage, even on their income. A lot of people think athletes make a lot of money. Man, a lot of athletes are living paycheck to paycheck. So the minimum wage right now, I'll use the NFL because I don't know the NBA and I don't want to give wrong data. But the minimum wage right now in the NFL is $675,000 a year. Depending on where you live, after you pay taxes, after you pay your agent, after you pay attorney fees, you're lucky if you walk away with $380,000, $400,000, and that's what 72% of NFL players are making.
And that's also banking on you have a full 4-year, maybe a 4-year career.
Exactly. So when they see the Patrick Mahomes $400 million contract, or other Ezekiel Elliott, let's do some Dallas boys. He signed $125 million. Dak signed $180 million. Those aren't normal contracts. That's a very small percentage of athletes signing those contracts. So when we introduce our system to our athletes, we hope all our athletes go first round, but we introduce a system to them that will start building them wealth, planning at 27, 28, because we're hoping, again, they play 15 years, but we're also looking at the worst case scenario that they are, what the data says, and they're done playing at 27 and 28. So we get them immediately into the real estate game.
Gotcha. And we'll touch on that because that's important. And I think that's a really that's a really great thing to set athletes up for their future. So when you talk about college income and college athletes and the way that they've been making money, to my understanding, I think that's also changing, right?
Because, oh my goodness, that is a ball game changer.
I've heard about this, and it seems like 4 or 5 years ago, maybe even 2 years ago, athletes were not being compensated. I don't want to say fair or justly because I don't know anything about this world, man, but it seems like they weren't getting paid. So where are we right now in collegiate sports?
So I'll tell you, last year, players weren't getting paid. It became official in July where they could benefit off their name, their image, and their likeness. When I was at Baylor, I was surrounded by multiple first-round athletes. But while we were all at Baylor, majority of those athletes would go hungry. They would have to steal food to eat at nighttime because the campus dining halls were closed. They weren't getting paid like they are today. And so, like you said, 5 years ago, and I can only speak on that because I was in college 5 years ago in 2016. Players, they were trying to figure out how they were paying rent. They were superstars trying to figure out, how am I going to pay rent? And banking that they didn't get injured or in trouble, knowing that they had a check coming. Now the game has completely changed, not only for the players, but also for people like myself who represent athletes. So now with this new NIL, name, image, and likeness, players can get paid off their name without using their school's trademark or any of their copyrights. So I can't use a player's name, but for an example, we just signed a player from UT. And I got him an NIL deal for $10,000. And all he has to do is go on a podcast 3 times for 45 minutes, and then he has to sign autographs for an hour. So for, under 4 hours of his time, he got paid $10,000 from this podcast company. that would have never happened last year. And so it's just a game changer. I wish I represented the quarterback from Alabama, Bryce Young. In 30 days, Bryce Young made $1.2 million in NIL deals.
Wow.
Yeah.
So these are appearances, interviews.
Appearances, interviews, they're doing clothing lines. So with our athletes, we immediately get them a clothing line. And, man, this is just the truth. We get them a cotton T-shirt or a dry fit, and we put their number and name on the back, and that's it. And they're selling $30,000-$40,000 of these shirts in 30-45 days.
Why do you think that happened? I mean, why do you think that there was such a restriction on what athletes in college could make, and now there's a push for let's get these athletes paid? Why did that happen, and why do you think it's changing?
I think it happened because the country in a whole, there's a term that's going around that's popular, woke up. Woke. And I think that's what happened. And, we see it with a lot of different aspects and topics, but to stay on topic with this one, I think the country got woke, and it happened because, like I said, a lot of these athletes were superstars. They'd go and throw 5 touchdowns, scored 3 touchdowns, have, 20 tackles and 5 interceptions, but then go home hungry. Their mom and dad having to pay for plane tickets when they couldn't afford it to watch their own kids. So I think a group of individuals, whether small or large, said, hey, we need to do something. And a scholarship isn't enough. The other side of this battle was, well, they get full scholarships, and we're paying for their books in their schools. But, of course, eventually it came out to be to where that wasn't enough for them.
I think that's a great thing that happened, because when you think about it, just what we were talking about, you have 3 to 4 years on a professional level. These athletes are given, dedicating their lives to something, and it's a gamble, right? Because what happens if you don't make it,
Correct.
To the NFL or the NBA, and you've given your whole life to this, and now you've played through college. Worst case scenario, you get injured, right? You haven't made anything, and what's your future prospect then?
Yep.
What do you do?
Yep.
So, well, I think the real estate has, I think that's a great idea, the way you're implementing it. I think it's going to benefit a lot of athletes. So where are you right now as far as growth in your business model?
So in my business model, last year, in one of the most craziest years that I've experienced, and I think that, America has experienced, I made my first profit. I made the most money that I've ever made last year. And then our business and our business model even doubled, almost about to triple what we did last year during a pandemic. But I became official and I became licensed with the state of Texas secretary in 2017. So 2020. So, it took us 3 years to get to where I have been envisioning. And even with our future plans, I didn't plan on having NBA first round players until, another 8 years. And now we're looking like we're going to have those first round NBA players in 2023.
That's awesome. So COVID actually, that's counterintuitive. COVID was actually a pretty good year for you.
It was. It was a great year for me, and it was a challenging year because, the traditional way of doing things is recruiting. I'm back to doing that now that things have gotten a little bit back to normal. Traveling, flying, recruiting, meeting parents. Last year, they didn't allow agents at games, so we didn't fly, we didn't travel, we didn't do none of that. I used social media and just picked up the phone.
So when you're starting out an endeavor, whether it's real estate or sports agent or anything that anyone's doing out there, you just said you didn't make a profit till last year, man.
Correct.
So what that means is you were working for, you said 2017 is when you got your license?
Correct.
So you're working 3, almost 4 years grinding without a profit. What is driving you to continue? Because, man, some people start businesses, and if they don't, let's even forget about business. Let's just talk about a hobby, right? Like you see these kids flipping cards. You see people trying to flip cars.
Yep.
If it doesn't go the way they want, people give up. Forget a year. They'll give up within 3 months, right? They didn't make any money. Oh, my God, I got to give up now. I can't do it. It can't be done. So what kept you pushing through those years, wanting to keep going?
One term, and I use this term a lot, and it's passion. Passion drove me when I wasn't making profit. And what I tell people all the time when I'm, hired to go speak at different places is I just, I got to speak at Baylor University not too long ago. And what I told the young people there was passion will eventually turn into profit. And one of the things that that is heartbreaking to me is I have friends that are nurses, that are RNs, or work in another career field, and they tell me I hate going to work. They make good money. Nurses make good money. They make, especially during COVID, they made a lot of money. They got really good benefits, but they get up in the morning and they hate going to work. One of my friends is an RN, and he says I hate going to work. And even when I was broke, just to be honest with you, when I was struggling to make ends meet, when I was spending all my money on athletes, investing in athletes, I woke up passionate. And so before I got into this business, it was passion over profit. And I wanted to, there's a data out there right now. 68% of NFL players are dead broke 3 years after their last football game. And I'm giving you
Wow.
NFL stats. And then there's a coalition, though, with the father figure. So 68% are dead broke 3 years from their last football game. 72% of NFL players grew up without their dad. And so I grew up without my dad. I grew up in the story, the ghetto story of America. My mother was a single mother. My biological father was a dope boy, and he was in prison. He was incarcerated for 14 years of my life, and I watched my mom raise four men by herself. She worked 2 to 3 jobs. We had to share rooms. We had to move from apartment to an apartment. But I watched her struggle, and I knew even as a kid that I wanted to get to a place in life that I could take care of my mother. And that's where we got last year. But it was passion that drove me when I was broke. And just a little bit background story. While I was doing real estate, I was an Uber driver. And so when I would get done showing my houses, closing my deals, and then also recruiting athletes, going to games when I traveled to Austin, Texas, or College Station to a basketball game to try to talk with a parent, I would drive Uber on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights. And I still have that SUV to this day. And so it was Uber Black. So I made a little bit more money than your average Uber driver. And I have a W-9 still to this day, and I keep it with me. And I made $14,000 in 3 months driving Uber. And the reason why I made that much is because I knew that I needed some marketing money. I needed some cards, I needed some videos, I needed some marketing stuff to help grow my business. So I dedicated myself to driving Uber till I made $10,000, and I ended up making $14,000 so I could market my business.
That's awesome. I think a lot of people ask, hey, man, how do I start a business or start anything without any money? And I think the answer is you're going to need a little bit of money. But the positive is there are so many opportunities out right now to make money and get you that jump start that there's really no excuse for anybody to come to the table and say, man, I didn't start that endeavor or that new idea because I was broke.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a great thing. And I mean, shoot, Uber's pretty easy to sign up for, right? You just
It's
sign
super
up,
easy.
get a car. I think you could rent a car. By the way, if anyone wants to get some startup money, I think you can rent a car through Uber to Uber.
Absolutely.
And they offer you a discounted rate. So
You just got to have a clean license and insurance.
yeah, that's great, man. So, the American ghetto story, right? I think that has a lot of power in it because, unfortunately, I think the word that's getting thrown around right now is, sheltered, sensitive. I think a lot of kids growing up right now, they haven't had really, and I'm not trying to downplay struggle. I know everybody has their demons, everybody
Correct.
has their struggle, but there is a struggle machine out there that a lot of people are going through. And it's scary because you can kind of go both ways,
Correct.
right? Nothing's guaranteed.
Yep.
And it's a risky come up story. So what were some of the, setbacks that you had really starting up or chasing your dreams? What are some things that, did you ever feel like, man, this is really fucking hard. I don't think I can do it. Did you ever have those thoughts?
Oh yeah, man. I had those thoughts. I had many situations to where my age played a factor. I was 26 years old when I was a licensed sports agent and realtor, and still to this day, I'm the youngest certified agent in the WNBA. So when it came to the sports agency route, a lot of parents was like, I'm not trusting no 26, 27-year-old kid with my daughter or my son's future career, especially without a resume, and I didn't work for a big name agency. So that played a factor. And then just being transparent, also being African American in this country, being a black and brown individual, played a factor into it. Not as big as a factor as my young age, because one thing that helps me realize that although we got a long way to go in this country, we've also come very far, because some of my first clients didn't look like me. They were white and they were female. Macy Morris, Peyton Williams, these are all superstars if you Google their name. And they could have signed with the big name agent who had 10 first rounders, but they signed with the young agent who was grinding and hustling. And, just to hype myself up a little bit, I got them the biggest contracts overseas.
Nice.
But they stepped up and they said, hey, Pat, we're going to believe in you. You're professional. You present yourself professional. They never looked at, what I look like, and how young I was. They said, look, you put on paper how you're going to take care of us. Now you prove it. We're going to give you a chance to prove it. And that's how I got here.
And I think a lot of your, background has to do with that,
Correct.
right? I mean, you've worked hard.
Yep.
You've come up through that, struggle,
Yeah.
right? So kind of what it means to put in the effort and have it pay off. So it's always good to have somebody like that on your side.
Yep.
So that makes sense. It makes sense why someone would go with you.
Yeah.
Because is there an average age for a sports agent? I mean, are these guys 40, 50, 60s,
So in the new world that we live in and with social media, it's like anything. It's like real estate as well. The industry is changing. It's no longer the 40, 50-year-old white man that is the most paid agent. It's a 30-year-old, late 20-year-old individual that's, leading the industry. So it's no longer, again, 10 years ago, the average age of an agent, and I'm just throwing a number out there. This is no data to support it, but just off of knowing what I know, the top agents were late 40s, 50-year-old white males, and now it's changed so many. We've never had this many black agents in the sports industry, and we've never had this many black women agents in the sports industry. One of the top 5 agents right now in the NFL is a black woman. Her name is Nicole, and she works for Clutch Sports, which is one of LeBron James's agents.
Nice.
So the industry is changing, man. It's no longer the old people. It's younger people that are running with it.
So we had our first podcast here a week ago, and me and Seth, shout out to Seth, by the way, who's not here today. He's my co-host. We were talking about just the power of social media and how it's changing, really everything, right? I mean, it's changing the way people communicate. It's changing what can and cannot be done. And I think you were talking about, woke, which, man, I've got I don't have a problem with woke, but I think it's being used for so many different things.
Yep.
And a lot of things that people want to kind of put on the radar, they're using woke as the hashtag for it.
I agree, big time.
So I think social media has a lot to do with that, and it's giving us a lot of information, both, negative, positive, and neutral.
Yeah.
But I think society is having to really act like a filter now and figure out what's actually right and what's wrong. One thing that I kind of admire about your story is, I did a little bit of research on you, man.
Okay.
Is you were an advocate.
Yeah.
For one of your friends. Mm-hmm. This happened, I think it was a couple of years ago, but this
Correct.
happened to one of your friends in Temple.
Mm-hmm.
And he was pretty much bum rushed by police, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, Michael Dean.
Yep. And he was bum rushed by police. He was thrown to the ground and arrested. And the story came out that he was apparently crossing the street. He was at a crosswalk and was told to stop and did not stop, apparently. But it turned out that this guy had autism.
Correct.
Legitimately.
Yep.
Okay. And the cop did not know that or ignored that. Mm-hmm. I don't know exactly what it was specifically.
Correct.
But you came out and you were an advocate of that, and that blew up on social media.
Yeah.
So talk about that.
So there's 2 different situations that happened. So with that situation with Stephen, not Michael Dean, he had autism. Well, a police officer approached him while he was leaving work from Whataburger because he has to work and then walk home. Well, the cop was a brand new cop. In my town where I'm from, Temple, Texas, it's about 100,000 now. It's a small town, USA. Everything evolves around the high school football team. So this was a brand new cop that didn't know about Steve, and everybody knows him in the community. He's always smiling and walking, waving at you on his way to work or leaving work. Well, when the police approached him, he got afraid. He has autism, and he started walking away, and the cop knocked his head on the ground, tackled him, and arrested this kid or this man. He's a grown man. We're classmates. He's 30 years old as well. and arrested him for evading arrest.
Wow.
It wasn't evading arrest.
And this was his first time
This was his first time
interacting with police.
First time interacting with police. He didn't know what to do. And again, the whole community, they love him. The city rallied around him. They rallied around me. We got him the proper counseling he needed to interact with cops, all of that. And so I've never been where I come from. You literally had to survive, and you had to survive where I came from. And like I told you, I grew up in government housing. I didn't have no dad around. If you let somebody bully you, you were going to be getting bullied all your life. And I never let nobody bully me. I never let nobody bully my brothers. I never let nobody bully my mom. I fought a lot as a kid because I wasn't going to let nobody bully me. And so that transitioned to my adulthood. I wasn't going to let somebody bully my classmate. And then you had the Michael Dean situation as well, and we can speak on that if you want to. But yeah, so that's what happened. He got tackled, but it was all miscommunication. If that officer would have had the proper training to realize he was dealing with an autistic individual, I don't believe it would have, and it should have escalated that far.
And I think the family, from what I read, they did hire counsel to, I think they had litigation with the police department. But again, it's not really because, and it's not because anyone's anti-police. It's
Correct.
just we want training
Correct.
in place
Correct.
to avoid these preventable situations. And I think that's how you put it as
Yeah,
well.
and that's how I want. I'm huge. You will hear me say all the time is we have a huge police problem in America. And when you go back and do the history of policing in America, police were established to seek after slaves and put slaves or escaped slaves or former slaves back into slavery. And I don't think America has done a good job at transitioning a new policing formation or platform in America. But you will also hear me say that I am not anti-police. We need police in America. It's ignorant for anybody to say defund the police when they mean take the police department out of the community. Yeah. I think that's very ignorant. And then I got really passionate about, speaking up in regards to police brutality and, hey, let's just come up with a better policing system with Michael Dean. You're going to hear about Michael Dean in the next few months. And in all respects to George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, his story told to me by Lee Merritt. Lee Merritt is one of the biggest civil attorneys right now in the country, based out of Dallas. Lee Merritt has told me when Michael Dean's murder is released, it's going to shake up America like it did with George Floyd.
Can you speak on Michael Dean?
Yeah, so I can speak on Michael Dean. So Michael Dean was my classmate. We are both the same age. And in December of 2019, on Michael Dean's December 2nd, 2019, my classmate in Temple, Texas, my hometown, was driving to deliver his daughter's birthday cake. And it was at nighttime. It was a little bit after 7 p.m. And the birthday cake was in the passenger seat. Well, Michael Dean did what almost every black kid growing up in ghetto America was taught. When a police turns on his lights, you drive to a safe, lit up spot where there's cameras, if best, but at least lit up. You put your hands on the steering wheel, you put your wallet on the dash, and you don't make any sudden movements, and you hope that you survive an interaction with the cop. Michael Dean did just that. He drove a little bit over half a mile to a gas station, and the cop didn't pull behind Michael Dean. The cop pulled in front of Michael Dean, which is not protocol. And then the cop went to the window with his gun drawn out, and he said, "Give me your keys." Michael Dean did everything he was supposed to do. Michael Dean did everything that he was taught to survive an interaction with the cop. He gave the officer his keys, and the officer's story is that he accidentally discharged in his temple and killed him.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and so Temple tried its best to cover it up, and then I got a hold of Lee Merritt, and Lee Merritt was able to expose the good old boy system in Temple. And so because of COVID, the officer hasn't had his court date, and they haven't released a video. And so they're trying their best to keep this under wraps. But once that video is released, again, it's going to be just another one of those stories where you see a unarmed black man do everything in his capabilities to survive an interaction with a cop, but he ended up murdered.
Man, that is, whew,
Yeah.
That's terrible, man.
Yeah.
That's terrible. And you know what sucks is there are a lot of police
Correct.
that are out there and they are working hard.
Correct.
And they are honest and they are courageous and they're doing things right. And you have, one thing I don't like using this term because it's been used so much to kind of explain these incidences, and that's bad apples,
Yeah.
right? Well, we always have a few bad apples, but how is it that it's so regular, right?
Correct.
That it's happening so often, that it just keeps popping up, and it's a tough situation, man.
Yeah.
I think it really does have to do with I mean, coming in front of a car when
Right.
you're trying to pull somebody over I know that for a fact is not protocol.
Correct.
Right? So what can be done to really guarantee that protocols are followed? And really that comes with, training.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
Training, and I think also vetting.
Vetting.
Because if you think about it, man, I mean, imagine being a cop and you are for 8, 10, 12 hours a day are dealing with crazy freaking people.
Correct.
Right? We're not talking race. We're not talking ethnicity. We're talking just like crazy people.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And that's what you got to do all day. People are trying to come at you. People are trying to kill you. So after a while, it's like, who does that cop, the young cop that's walking the beat, that's real excited about
Correct.
his new job, wants to uphold justice, who does that person become?
Correct.
In, I mean, shoot, forget 10 years. Who does he become in 3 years?
Exactly.
So, maybe regular evaluations,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Maybe something that could vet people and not just have, well, you've been a cop for 20 years, so you're good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Maybe regular evaluations, psychiatric evaluations. Maybe there's a time to stop being a cop.
Yep.
Right? Maybe there's a time to hang it up.
Yep.
So
I'm presenting a law right now, and we're waiting on COVID to slow down.
When you say you're presenting a law, what do you mean?
Presenting a law to the lobbyists in Austin. So we're waiting to have a meeting ordained at the Capitol. And this law I'm presenting is called the Michael Dean Law. And what this law is going to do is we already have the body cameras on every cop. And there's a lot of states, I think now statewide, I think it's required. But what this law is going to do, because again, I'm a huge advocate that, majority of cops are good guys. And it's like any business, majority of pastors, churches, realtors, they're good people. But again, too often we have issues like this happen. So the Michael Dean Law, what it's going to do is when I was in college, I was working at Sprint. And I worked at a call center, and I'm kind of exposing myself a little bit, but at the call center, we had a bonus, and that bonus was $3,000 a month, and you had to keep your transfer rate down. You had to sell so many cell phones. Well, man, I worked there for 3 years, almost going on 4. Well, I got fired from Sprint because there is a department, and I forgot the name of the department, but it was like an HR department. And they listened to one of my recorded phone calls. And on that phone call, I was hanging up on a customer to keep my transfer rate down. Because if you transfer to another account, then you wouldn't hit your quota. So they caught me doing it a couple times, and they fired me. And I was sick because I needed that job for college. Well, what I'm presenting with the Michael Dean Law is that police officers, they get their body cams checked regularly, or on a random basis. I'm sorry, not regularly, but on a random basis. Maybe it's for a full day to see how they interact with the community, and just to make sure that they're following the protocols and the training that has been taught to them.
So right now, are body cams checked regularly, or are they?
They're
just,
not. They're not.
Okay.
They're just, so if I have an incident and I make a claim at the police station and I say, hey, this cop harassed me or he called me a bad word, then they'll go pull the body cam. But there's no department in Texas that has a department that randomly just checks a cop's interactions throughout the day. And that's what I'm wanting to happen at the police station. And I believe that will be huge on helping this issue that we have in this country with police brutality.
That's interesting, man.
Yeah.
So they're monitoring, Sprint.
Correct.
Right, when it comes to cell phones.
Yep.
I don't think you can do much damage with a cell phone. I don't think so.
Yeah.
You might be able to if you hack into someone's phone or send the wrong text, but where it counts, yeah, I think definitely you need some evaluation.
Correct.
Definitely. Okay. Great. Well, Pat, man, it was good having you on. Yeah. There was so much more I wanted to cover, man, that we didn't get to, so we're gonna have to get you back on here.
I'll be back.
Okay, cool.
I'll be back.
Thank you, man.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Talk to you next time.
Yep.